Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're diving into something I know a lot of you find fascinating.
It is pretty cool.
Those weird little quirks in language,
Yeah.
that make us tick, or maybe I should say make us cringe.
Right.
Like those words that make you scrunch up your face and say, oof, why?
It's amazing how words have that power, isn't it?
Right.
Just sounds,
They are.
but they can evoke such strong
You do.
emotions.
And get this, our source material for this deep dive is a conversation between two friends,
Okay.
just casually chatting about the words they can't stand.
Interesting.
Which is so relatable. We've all been there. And in their back and forth, they actually touch on some seriously interesting linguistic concepts.
Like what?
For example, one of the first words that came up was grok. And apparently one of the friends is not a fan.
Really?
Just not their cup of tea.
It's interesting they brought up that word grok because it's supposed to be a positive word,
Is it?
conveying a deep understanding of something.
Okay.
But as their conversation highlights, even a word's intended meaning can get overshadowed by something as simple as its sound.
It's true. Their issue with the word wasn't with the meaning at all. It was how grok actually sounds.
Okay.
They even compared it to gross, which, let's be honest, isn't exactly a ringing endorsement.
Right.
But that comparison might seem off the cuff, but it actually hints at a really cool idea in linguistics
Uh-oh.
called sound symbolism.
Sound symbolism.
This is the idea that certain sounds and words can actually create subconscious feelings or associations, completely separate from their dictionary definitions.
I see.
So wait, are you telling me there's a reason why some words just sound harsh or soft,
Yes.
even if we don't consciously think about it?
Exactly.
Wow.
It's like that experiment where people are shown two shapes, one spiky, one rounded,
Okay.
and asked to match them to the made-up words Kiki and Booba.
Kiki and Booba.
Oh. And people almost always pair the spiky shape with Kiki and the rounded one with Booba,
Interesting.
simply based on the sounds.
Oh, wow. I've totally heard of that. So are you saying that even though grok is supposed to mean something good,
Yeah.
the sounds themselves might be creating a negative association for our friend?
It's definitely possible. Think about it. The G and K sounds in grok are pretty strong. They share that kind of harshness with words like grit, crack, or even attack,
Oh, yeah.
which don't exactly scream pleasant.
No.
So even though it also has sounds in common with growth, our brains might be zeroing in on those harsher aspects
Interesting.
and making a snap judgment.
That's wild. So it's like our brains have this whole other level of processing language that we're not even aware of.
Right.
And speaking of strong reactions to sounds,
Okay.
this conversation takes an interesting turn when the friends start talking about misophonia.
Ah, yes, misophonia.
Misophonia.
For those who might not be familiar, it literally translates to hatred of sound.
Hatred of sound.
It's a condition where people have extremely negative reactions to specific sounds,
Okay.
way beyond just finding them annoying.
Right. And it's not just like hating the sound of nails on a chalkboard.
Right.
Right. We're talking about a real visceral response.
Yes.
That can be super disruptive to people's lives.
They can be.
In fact, our friends in the conversation actually share this anecdote about a cashier
Okay.
who had a really intense reaction to a baby crying.
Oh, wow.
And it really highlights just how debilitating this condition can be
It can.
for some people.
Absolutely. And while things like chewing, pen clicking, or keyboard typing are common triggers for people with misophonia,
Right.
it can really vary from person to person.
It really makes you realize that something as simple as a sound can be a totally different experience for someone else.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Now, our friends didn't stop at just sounds.
Okay.
They also had some strong opinions about specific words themselves.
It's inevitable. Like,
Oh, yeah. This is where it gets really good.
okay.
They called out suffer, and of course the one and only moist.
Oh, those are good ones.
So as a language expert, what's your take? Why do these words get such a bad rap?
Well, it's rarely just one thing.
Right.
Our personal histories, cultural backgrounds, even the way a word sounds can all play a role in how we react to it.
Okay, so unpack that for me.
Okay.
What's the deal with suffer, for instance?
Right. Well, from a purely grammatical standpoint, there's nothing wrong with it.
Right.
But you're right. It does have a certain weight to it.
It does.
It evokes images of hardship, pain, unpleasantness.
Yeah.
So it's understandable that someone might have an aversion to it,
Yeah.
even if it's not being used in a particularly negative way.
Right. It's like those subtle emotional undertones that we pick up on without even realizing it.
Right. It's true. And it shows how even a simple word can become loaded with associations,
Right.
whether it's a specific region, social group, or even a set of beliefs.
Wow, so you're saying our word choices
It's possible.
could be revealing all sorts of things about our backgrounds and biases without us even knowing it.
Right.
That's both fascinating and a little terrifying.
It really highlights the power of language.
It does.
And speaking of powerful words, we can't forget about the elephant in the room,
Which is
the one that seems to make everyone cringe.
moist.
Okay, yes, moist.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I'll admit, I'm curious too.
Sure.
What is it about this word that just rubs people the wrong way?
Well, there's no single answer that linguists agree on,
Okay.
but there are some compelling theories out there.
Okay.
One of the most popular ones actually goes back to sound symbolism.
So even though people say they hate the way moist sounds,
Right.
it might be something deeper going on.
Exactly. It's about the specific combination of sounds and the effect they have on our brains.
Okay.
Remember how we talked about those strong G and K sounds in grok? We did.
With moist, some linguists believe it's the way the oi sound blends into the isic that creates that inherently unpleasant auditory experience.
So are you saying the sounds themselves might be mimicking something inherently unpleasant?
It's possible.
Okay.
Our brains are wired to make connections, and for a lot of people, moist seems to subconsciously trigger sensations related to unpleasant textures, things that are wet, slimy, or sticky.
Okay, now that you mention it, I can kind of see that. It's
Yeah.
like the word itself is trying to be wet, and yeah, I'm getting the ick just thinking about it.
And to make things even more complex, moist can be a pretty imprecise word,
Really?
which might add to the aversion.
What do you mean?
Well, it sits in this weird in-between space.
Yeah.
It's not quite wet, not quite dry.
Okay.
That ambiguity can be unsettling. Think about it. A moist cake sounds delicious, but a moist handshake? Not so much.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
Yeah.
And in the conversation, the friends even talk about how moist gets linked to certain textures that most people find unpleasant, like getting dressed in a humid bathroom.
Of course.
Definitely not helping its case.
Right. It all goes back to those subconscious associations our brains excel at making.
They do.
We might not be able to control that initial ew feeling when we hear moist, but understanding the linguistics behind it can at least give us some perspective.
Right. I love that.
Yeah,
A little knowledge can go a long way.
exactly.
And understanding why we react the way we do.
For sure.
But before we get too cozy with moist,
Okay.
our friends chat took another unexpected turn, didn't it?
It did. It did.
Remember how one friend dislikes grok and compared it to gross?
I do, yes.
Well, it turns out that aversion might stem from something a little deeper than sound symbolism.
Oh, really?
They went on to express a pretty strong dislike
Okay.
for a certain tech CEO who just so happens to be rather fond of the word grok.
This is going to be good.
Oh, no, not Elon Musk?
Yes, Elon Musk.
Oh, boy.
And they made a fascinating comparison, likening him to Thomas Edison.
Hold on, Edison, as in light bulb?
Yes.
Phonograph Edison? What does he have to do with Elon Musk and a hatred of the word grok?
Well, it's not so much about Edison himself, but more about the type of innovator he represents.
Okay.
Our friend sees both him and Elon Musk as figures who, while undeniably brilliant and influential,
Yeah.
might also have a knack for, let's say, strategically claiming credit for ideas.
Oh, okay, so we're talking about that whole, like, standing on the shoulders of giants thing, right? Like, we tend to focus on the big names, but we don't always see all the people who contributed along the way.
And our friend specifically brought up Edison's rivalry with Nikola Tesla.
Tesla.
You know, it's Tesla, the brilliant inventor behind alternating current,
Right.
the technology that powers most of our homes today.
It's true.
History often credits Edison with the invention of the light bulb.
Yeah.
But Tesla played a critical role in developing and improving electrical systems.
Right.
And our friend seems to see Elon Musk's story through a similar lens.
Okay.
They argue that his success with companies like Tesla and PayPal, while impressive,
Mm-hmm.
is as much about his savvy business sense and ability to control the narrative as it is about groundbreaking innovation.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in the hype around someone like Elon Musk and think, right, he single-handedly revolutionized entire industries.
Right.
But innovation is rarely a solo act, is it?
Exactly. And it brings up a really interesting question.
What's that?
To what extent do we separate the creator from the creation?
Oh, that is interesting.
We all benefit from Edison's work on the light bulb.
We do.
And whether you love him or hate him,
Right.
Elon Musk is
Yeah.
impacting the world in a major way.
He is.
But should our enjoyment or use of those creations prevent us from acknowledging the complexities of how they came to be?
That's a tough one.
It is.
It's like appreciating a piece of art while grappling with the problematic actions of the artist.
Right.
There's no easy answer.
There really isn't, and that's what makes these conversations so interesting. Our friends back and forth challenges us to think more critically, especially when it comes to these larger-than-life figures like Elon Musk.
Right.
Are they visionary geniuses, savvy business people, capitalizing on the work of others? Or, most likely, a complex combination of both?
Right. It's like that saying, never meet your heroes, right? Or in this case, maybe it's don't buy into the hero narrative completely.
Right.
There's always more to the story.
Always. And that brings us to another point our friend made.
Okay.
That often overlooked role of privilege and circumstance in shaping legacy.
Oh, right. The example of Charles Sanders Peirce.
Exactly.
A brilliant philosopher who, well, didn't always get that recognition he deserved.
Didn't get the recognition.
Yeah.
Peirce struggled financially,
Right.
never held a secure, prestigious academic position.
Wow.
And a lot of his groundbreaking work went unpublished during his lifetime. And yet, he was clearly a genius.
It really makes you wonder.
Makes you wonder.
How many brilliant minds are out there throughout history and even today whose potential was limited because they just weren't born into the right circumstances?
It's a humbling thought.
It is.
It reminds us that our place in the world, the opportunities we have, even the words we gravitate towards, are influenced by so many factors both within and beyond our control.
So true. It's like this whole conversation has been a deep dive into not just language,
Right.
but also human nature, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It just goes to show that our reactions to words, even seemingly simple ones, can reveal a lot about our individual experiences, our cultural backgrounds, and even our subconscious biases.
It's been a wild ride from the science of sound symbolism to the complexities of innovation privilege and how our brains process the world around us.
It has been fascinating.
Who knew a casual chat between two friends could spark such a fascinating conversation?
That's the beauty of language.
It is. So, listeners, next time you find yourself cringing at a certain word or feeling completely wowed by a particular innovator, take a second to think about the why behind your reaction.
I like that.
What past experiences, cultural influences, or even unconscious biases might be coloring your perception? You might be surprised by what you discover.
Always more to learn.
Until next time, happy deep diving.